the Bass Institute, and I would like if you could share with us the values that rule it and what will be your next endeavors on it.
Well, thank you. So I've been at Greenberg Traurig for 37 years. I started here when I was a law student. I've been here my entire life, entire adult life, and have had the benefit of having unbelievable opportunities, not just to develop myself as a trial lawyer, but to oversee a global litigation department of over 600 people, and for the last 6 years to be co-president. One thing that my experience as ABA president did last year was, number one, convince me just how much progress remains to be made on this issue. I have to tell you, I am shocked after 35 years in the law firm, in the law practice, to see how little movement we have made on these issues. And I made the personal decision that I wanted to make sure that young women lawyers 30 years from now were not engaging in the same conversation. And so my decision was that I was going to leave the practice of law and devote 100% of my time to helping law firms and CEOs in private industry better understand why what they have been doing for the last 30 years has not been successful, and helping them with very granular solutions, some of which you've heard about earlier today, about what they need to change to stem this tide. From my perspective, forget about the fact that it's the right thing to do. Law firms and private employers are not going to be able to succeed unless they get the benefit of all the talent that is out there. And if 50% of the talent that's available to you is walking out the door after you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars training them to finally handle your clients and handle your customers, and you haven't figured out how to stem that tide, you will not be successful. So I think the best part of the story is that we now know, we now have academic studies to say there are ways to deal with the unconscious bias that are the explanation for that 20 cents differential every dollar that a woman is paid. We need to get the word out as to how we need to change the way we do things to ensure that women and minorities perceive that the legal profession provides a hospitable environment for them and that it's worth committing their career to their employer. So, as of January 1st, that's what I'll be doing.
Great. And before we open the floor to questions, I would like if you could give all lawyers in here some piece of advice as how to, individually, can they help fostering diversity and inclusion?
Well, I mean, I think you heard quite a bit in the last presentation about what a big difference an individual can make, whether it's by virtue of how you handle the little group that you may be chairing, or how you insist when there's a discussion at a table about recruiting candidates, that you not be fearful of saying, well, are you sure you're evaluating this person properly because they do happen to have the 3 small children? Or when you hear your partner say, well, I was going to take this young associate to St. Louis for this trial, but you know she has a 6-month-old baby, I don't want to impose, for you to say, well, did you ask her if she's prepared to go? Because you know this is an experience that she requires to get promoted. So it's important for all of us to, in a non-aggressive way, be the sounding board when our partners and employers say things. These people really are not, I mean, the good news is these people do not have bad motives. We are all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is to create a culture where we can cultivate our best talent and provide our clients the best possible legal work. None of our managing partners want to leave 50% of us at the door. That being said, they need our help. They really don't understand that much of their socialized behavior is not helpful. I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman I spoke at a conference with who was a now a GC of a very large company. He started at Kirkland & Ellis, and he was commenting on, he couldn't believe that 30 years later, he was still having this discussion. But he said that he had thought it was so important when he became this GC of this Fortune 100 company, he got a coach. And he explained how great he thought he was focusing on these issues, and the example he gave was the following. He said, when I interview a young woman lawyer, one of the first things I tell her is, you know, we really have a recognition importance of work-life balance, and we're gonna bend over backwards for you. And he said the first thing the coach did was say, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't do that unless you're asking that question or you're making that statement to the men as well as the women. But it was a perfect example of someone, a very bright and committed person who was really trying to solve the problem and just didn't get the fact that that's not helpful. It's not helpful to talk to every new woman recruit as if she's walking in with one hand tied behind her back. Well, we know you're not going to be able to work as hard because you may have children in your future. And it's just one of 50 examples I can give you where really well-intentioned people just don't understand that it's a different environment today. And so one thing we can all do is quietly call people out and say, you might want to rethink how you approach that. But I would suggest to you that the single most important thing that is impacting the ability of women to succeed is the unconscious bias that we all bring to everything we do, women as well as men. And I know that I have had to change my behavior in various ways, not because I was a woman that needed to be fixed. We do talk a lot about what we need to do to fix the women. And yet, there are socialized behaviors that are not necessarily helpful. One example, I know some of you in the room have heard this, is it took me years to get past the point when I had a meeting in my office to not say, because this is the way I was socialized when someone comes to my home, can I get you some coffee? And I would find myself sitting there pouring coffee for the 10 men who were sitting at the table unpacking their briefcases. Now, there's nothing wrong with that socialized behavior. But I do think women in the workplace need to think and say, am I confirming an expectation by the fact that, yeah, this is the way I was socialized. And it took me a long time to feel comfortable saying, help yourself to some coffee. And then to go and sit at the head of the table, because this was also something I had to get past. What do women typically do? Women were socialized to be in groups. We played with dolls while the boys were on the field trying to prove that they could hit the ball harder than anybody else. When we typically sit at a table, what do? We go in the middle of the table because we want to get everybody to be, right? We want everybody to feel comfortable and get along. If I'm leading this group, and there are 10 people, by virtue of me sitting at the head of the table, I am making this statement to everybody there that I'm leading this meeting. And my point is just, our own socializations impact the way we interact with people every day, and certainly it does with men as well. When was the last time you heard a man being criticized as being too ambitious? Never. I never have in more than 35 years. You hear it commented about women all the time. She's too aggressive. She's too ambitious. I mean, these, for the most part, are in men considered positive traits. Now, again, it's this type of behavior that we all have to recognize in each other. And again, it's not, well, one of the great things about implicit bias, as problematic as it is that because we all have it, it's a conversation that we should be able to openly have in mixed gender company. Because yes, women have it as well as to other women, as well as to men. My point is becoming aware of the fact that this really is not intentional conduct, that we're all trying to achieve the same goal and we all need to work together to try and get there, not to be critical of each other, because for the most part, people do not have bad motives. They just don't know any better.
Well, now I open the floor to questions. Any questions? Hilarie?